Starting with our program.
Right. So good evening, everybody, and it's really good to be here with you guys. One of the things I want to say about clubs is I tell everybody I know that's, say they're kind of bored with life, you don't know what you want to do, and I say, well, join a club, especially a club of something you enjoy. And when you go to a club that you enjoy, you meet people that like what you like, you get friends, you make good acquaintances, and at Westerners here I've made a lot of friends. I've really enjoyed the subject, and it's a lot of fun. One of the things I like about this group is that when you think about school, you think about classes that were boring, you think about, you have to get through this. Well, when you come here, you don't have to take a test afterwards. You don't have to really write a book report or anything. But you can enjoy it with friends, and you can really learn, and it's really interesting, and it's just, to me, it's a lot of fun. Now tonight, we have a really good talk coming up. And before I go into that a little bit, I want to say that next month, we're going to have Mark Patton. So he's a really good speaker. And I want to mention too that when I think of people like him, I think about how important it is to study, let's say as Phil Brigandi used to put it, he's a former Westerner, it's the minutia, the tiny things of the West. And that's the kind of thing he deals with. Well, tonight, we're going to have a little bit more excitement, I think, with people that are fairly well known in California history. We have a talk by a guy who I really admire, and he's the type of person that can study something in the morning, come up with an idea, and by the afternoon he's got it pretty well written, and that afternoon he's already going to the publisher. So we're talking about what it really is on the game. So we have a talk tonight about tragedy. And tragedy is something we don't want to think about. But when you think about the idea that they were successful in doing something, and like in the movie, Sylvester Stallone said, you want to live for nothing, or do you want to die for something? All these people died for something, and that's what's really, to me, really interesting. So tonight we have as our speaker a man I admire and a great guy, Paul McClure.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to talk about 8 people who contributed tremendously to Los Angeles, and not only the building of it physically, but to its personality, its character, and of course its history. Each of these, by the way, appears as a separate book, and each of these books was edited by one of our fellows here of the Corral. So there are 8 of those altogether. But let's see who we're going to deal with. We're going to talk about William Workman, Thaddeus Lowe, Griffith, Amy Semple McPherson, Edward Doheny, William Mulholland, Spade Cooley, and Otis Chandler. And obviously with this many, we're going to go through them very quickly. So let's start with William Mulholland. And by the way, that book was edited by Dennis Bermudez. He was born in Belfast, Ireland. His mother died at age 7. He joined the British Navy at age 15. He migrated to the U.S. He prospected for gold in Arizona. And then finally, at age 23, he got a job with the Los Angeles Water Company. And he was an excellent employee. He promoted through the ranks, and by age 47, he was chief engineer of the Los Angeles City Water Department. In 1902, the National Reclamation Act was passed, and that allowed a lot of preservation of land. And at that time, it became clear that Los Angeles needed water, and Mayor Fred Eaton, who we'll get to in a footnote here later, got definitely involved. The bond measure was approved to acquire Owens Valley water rights in 1905, and there was lots of drama. Okay, the aqueduct construction began in 1907. It was 233 miles long. The Los Angeles Aqueduct was officially dedicated in its opening at the Cascades, the north end of the San Fernando Valley. In 1915, the city annexed the San Fernando Valley. During construction, there were water wars where there was a lot of shenanigans and dynamiting things and all of that. Fred Eaton and the Watterson brothers, who we'll get to shortly, both looked for ways to make money on this. The construction of the dam began in 1924. Of the St. Francis Dam, the St. Francis Dam cost $42 million. And the St. Francis Dam, of course, you're familiar with what happened there. It collapsed in 1928. Mulholland took responsibility, and that kind of ruined his wonderful reputation up to that point. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how would Gary Turner describe this? Well, Gary Turner would do it with poetry. And so in the books, at the end of each chapter, there is a 40-line poem. So, which these are ones that Gary inspired. So we took a couple verses from the first of the book, and at the end of the book, I'll just read the first and the last. A dedication to the Los Angeles Aqueduct Waterway turned out to be a historic holiday. On Wednesday, November 5th, 1913, more than 30,000 gathered at the Sylmar scene. And at the end, for drama, one first thinks of William Shakespeare, who wrote tragedies like Hamlet, Macbeth, and King Lear. But when you compare their stories to Mulholland's career, you'll find those fallen heroes have a modern-day peer. So, now we have a footnote on the first couple of guys here. We have to talk about Frederick Eaton, who ran the water company, then became mayor, but he saw this as a way to get rich quick. He bought the 40,000-acre Rickey Ranch. He tried to sell it to the city of Los Angeles. It didn't work. And we might mention too, if there had been a dam up there, they say the St. Francis Dam would not have been necessary, and so there wouldn't have been the collapse of the dam. But that, of course, is speculation. Also, kind of co-starring here are the Watterson brothers, who had a bank in Bishop, California. They gave a large loan mortgage on the Rickey Ranch to Eaton. The brothers tried to sell it to the city. It didn't go well. They were convicted on several counts of embezzlement, and $800,000 was missing from their banks, and anyhow, their lives kind of ended. But that's just a footnote. Let's go on to our next one. William Workman, and Ann Collier was the one who edited this book. He was born in England, immigrated to America at age 23, worked in the saddlery, arrived in New Mexico, met his buddy John Rowland. They opened a store in the distillery, and they moved to Southern California in 1841. John Rowland received the 18,020 Rancho grant from Governor Alvarado, and later in 1845, Pico re-granted 40,000 acres to both Workman and Rowland, officially making them each half owner of the ranch. Became a partner in the Hellman Temple and Company. He backed his son-in-law, FPF Temple, in numerous real estate projects, including the Temple Block in downtown Los Angeles. He became a silent partner in that bank. Their bank temporarily closed during the Panic of 1875. He borrowed money then from Lucky Baldwin to reopen the bank. He couldn't reopen the bank. The bank went out of business, and he committed suicide. So we'll do the first and the last poem here to keep Gary happy back there. John Rowland and I, without any bravado, sat down with Mexican Governor Alvarado. We continually negotiated the sale of land east of Los Angeles, just as we planned. And at the end, a bad economy triggered economic devastation, and Baldwin's betrayal led to my financial ruination. Now I've lost my ranch, business, and reputation. I can hardly fathom how we've fallen into this situation. Okay, and then we have a couple of footnotes here. We want to mention Walter Temple. He bought 50 acres. Oil was discovered on his 50 acres, and with that money, he restored a church, built a 11,000 square foot mansion, invested in the Temple block in downtown Los Angeles, which we referred to a moment ago. By 25, he was $335,000 in debt in the 1929 stock market crash. He lost everything. He ended up in 1930 moving to Ensenada to live out the rest of his life. So another hero of Los Angeles that just had something go wrong. Next, we have Thaddeus Lowe. And Giovanni Voces was the editor of this book. He was born in New Hampshire. He became a cobbler's apprentice. He set a cat aloft in a kite in 1849, and he was a brilliant scientist. He joined Professor Dinkelhoff's chemistry show, which with circuses. He built his first balloon that would carry people back in New Jersey in 1857. And he built a transatlantic balloon to cross the Atlantic in 1859. When the Civil War came, he used balloons for reconnaissance. And he started this first in the Battle of Bull Run in 1861. And then he kind of got at odds and negotiated his way out of the service in 1863. Came to California. Well, a little later, he patented ice-making machines. He developed a model Coke oven, patented his water gas processes, and again, this guy was a total genius and brilliant scientist plowing new ground. He moved to Pasadena, opened several ice-making plants, founded the Citizens Bank of Los Angeles, incorporated the Pasadena and Mount Wilson Railway. The mine was renamed Mount Lowe. The railway opened. He had a 70-room Echo House mountain at the top. So he was not only a brilliant scientist, but businessman who had this great resort. But he went bankrupt. Moved in with his daughter, died in Pasadena in 1913. As a humble farmhand or cobbler's apprentice, I never expected to enjoy a life so momentous. As Chief Aeronaut of the Union Army Balloon Corps, my reconnaissance saved many lives during the Civil War. And at the end, the unshakable belief in myself never got derailed, even when our projects or businesses failed. It is true that some ventures didn't make a dime, but I never failed. I was just ahead of my time. Okay, next, Griffith J. Griffith and Ann Collier edited this book. He was born in South Wales and migrated to America, settled in Pennsylvania, enrolled in the Fowler Institute of Journalism. Now you might wonder how a journalist makes a fortune. Well, he did it by reporting on mines. So when a load was discovered at a mine, he was one of the first to find out, and he wrote the articles about it, so he knew where and how to invest. He invested in a silver mine in Chihuahua, Mexico. He sold his interest in that mine, moved to Los Angeles. With money, he purchased a 4,000-acre rancho Los Feliz. He married Tina Mesmer, and then he sold the Bridgewater tract that he got in that marriage for nearly $1 million. And he operated the Ostrich Farm Railway from downtown to Griffith Park. Frank Burkett attempted to murder him, but failed. And so Frank shot himself. Griffith donated 3,000 acres of the park to the city of Los Angeles, but while in 1903, a little later, in a state of so-called alcoholic insanity, he shot his wife Tina in the face. And then he became a pariah, and even though he had dedicated the park to Los Angeles, they kind of wanted nothing to do with him that would honor him, or name the park after him, but that had already happened. He was sentenced to 2 years in San Quentin for shooting his wife, and was released from prison in 1906, published a book, and all kinds of great things happened at Griffith Park. The aviation park opened, the zoo. He pledged $100,000 to build an observatory at the park, but was still ignored, cold-shouldered by the city. He pledged $50,000 to build a Greek theater. There was even a prison farm at the north end of the park, which is kind of great irony. In 1919, he died. by the way, we were going to Griffith Park the other day, and my 20-year-old grandson was riding along, and I asked him, who is Griffith Park named after? And without any hesitation, he said, D.W. Griffith. So that worked. His name was kind of shuffled away. Okay, the rise. I was abandoned as a child and lived with relatives, but preferred to focus on what were the positives. I worked hard, behaved well, fulfilled obligations, and routinely exceeded even my own expectations. And then at the end, why would anybody turn down a $100,000 gift, then act self-righteous and get all miffed? With such substantial benefit to the community, they should say thanks and seize the opportunity. Next, Amy Semple McPherson and Alan Griffith edited this book. Now, she was born in Canada, was a great speaker. She married, when she was 18, evangelist Robert Semple. They went to Hong Kong on a missionary trip. She had a baby there and he died. So here she is, 18 years old in Hong Kong with a dead husband and a brand new baby. That's a tough start of life. She returned to New York. She married Harold McPherson. They had a son born, and she conducted her first independent revival in 1915. She began a cross-country tour traveling by car in 1918. She arrived in Los Angeles, which she loved, and that became her home base. And in 1921, they broke ground for the Angelus Temple. It was dedicated in 1923, and she now launched her radio station, KFSG, in 1924. But in 1926, while at the beach in Venice, she disappeared. Nobody knew where she went. A month later, she emerged from the desert in Mexico and told a story about how she'd been kidnapped. Pretty much nobody believed the story. She was charged with corruption of morals and obstruction of justice. The next year, those charges were all dismissed, and so she went on her vindication tour. She opened the Los Angeles Commissary in 1927. She married David Hutton in 1931, and if you can see on the side of the building, the name is Amy McPherson Hutton at that point. She divorced him 3 years later, had a daughter, and she died in Oakland, just very quietly. So, the rise. Our road trip started with me standing in a car, using a megaphone to share my biblical repertoire. From the back seat, I would enthusiastically preach on a street, in a park, to anyone within reach. And at the end, the media may allege my deportment debatable, but it actually helped followers see me as relatable. One lesson we're reminded from any misbehavior is that a steadfast Jesus is our redeeming Savior. Okay, next, Edward Doheny and Alan Griffith edited this book. He was born in Wisconsin, joined the Geological Survey, began prospecting in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and he was listed later, when things didn't go too well, as a painter, where he lived in he lived in New Mexico. He came to Los Angeles in 1891, and he discovered Brea and dug the first successful well in the Los Angeles oil field. And some of us who are older and have been around have seen scenes kind of like that picture, maybe a little more modern. He divorced from his first wife. He was an oil pioneer, but he made his real money in Mexico. He discovered oil in Tampico, incorporated the Mexican Petroleum Company of California, married his second wife, Estelle, and when that happened, his first wife, Carrie, committed suicide. He struck the oil in Mexico, and in 1916, the Cerro Azul No. 4 well was the world's largest producing well. He was very wealthy at that point. He gave a $100,000 loan to Secretary of the Interior Albert Fall. Now, it may not have been a loan originally, but certainly when it was looked back on with more scrutiny, it became a loan. And soon after that, he received a no-bid contract for oil reserves in Elk Hills, California. That became known as this Teapot Dome scandal. Now, while this was going on, his son, Ned and Ed Pluckett, were victims of a murder-suicide at his mansion, which is totally tragic. He was acquitted of bribery in the Teapot Dome scandal in 1930. He donated $1.1 million to USC for a library, and that's the Doheny Library at USC, where many of us have spent many hours. And when he died, his wife Estelle destroyed all the paperwork that related to his life, all the correspondence, legal documents, business records, everything. So, the rise. We hollered and danced in a mad celebration and knew that we had discovered our new occupation. It dawned on us that we were there at the infancy of what would become LA's booming new oil industry. And at the end, the death of my only son and Doheny namesake caused me both shock and unspeakable heartbreak. This tragedy happened when I had my hands full dealing with the Senate Teapot's Dome Scandal bull. Okay, next, Spade Cooley. Alan Griffin edited this book. Now, we all kind of remember Spade Cooley. He was born in Oklahoma, went to an Indian school in Oregon. His first son was born when he was 15. That is when the father was 15. I guess the son couldn't be born at 15. He hitchhiked to Hollywood. He played on street corners, and he finally got some jobs as a sideman in a variety of bands. And he appeared without credit in his first movie, though, in Land of the Fighting Men in 1938. He was finally hired by Gene Autry to play in his band. Went with Cal Shrum's band and took over the Jimmy Wakely's band finally at the Venice Pier Ballroom. The Venice Pier Ballroom and a ballroom in Riverside were the two hot spots for Western swing back during World War II. He got in a battle of the bands with Bob Wills, which got him a lot of publicity. He appeared in his first credited movie in 1944, Take Me Back to Tulsa. He married Ella May, his second wife, and in that same year recorded a song, Shame on You, and there's no little irony there, as you will see in a minute. The Spade Cooley Show debuted on radio in 1946. He moved to the Santa Monica Ballroom. Well, he did both Riverside and Santa Monica, and his television show debuted in 1948. So he went from radio to television. The Cooleys filed for divorce in 1953. The Spade Cooley television show ended in 1957, and when that happened, he moved with his wife to the Antelope Valley, and he apparently beat his wife to death in front of their 12-year-old daughter. And so he was sent to prison in 1968. He received a parole by Ronald Reagan saying he could get out on parole in 1970, but during that time he was allowed out to do benefit concerts. He was doing a benefit concert. During the intermission, in one of those, he went backstage and died. That was the end of Spade Cooley. The king of Western swing, but again, a little flaw or two in his life. At the beginning, I once hustled to play bills as a struggling musician. I'd take any job and had no shortage of ambition. That dogged persistence finally earned recognition for packed house performances as well as composition. And at the end, Ella May would complain about being battered and bruised, but the police just shrugged when she said she was abused. They asked what she had done to make me so mad that I felt compelled to beat her up that bad.
Oh my God.
Okay, and finally, Otis Chandler and Alan Griffin edited this book. He was the fourth of the generations in this family. There were California kingpins. Harrison Gray Otis, in 1882, moved to LA, purchased 25% of the Los Angeles Times. Also owned a lot of property in the Central Valley. In 1909, Harris Gray Otis and Partners bought 48,000 acres of the San Fernando Valley. And remember this when the water was being planned to come in. He died. His son, Harry Chandler, became the second publisher of the paper. When he died in 1944, his son, the third generation now, Norman Chandler, became the third publisher of the Los Angeles Times. Otis was born in 1927 to Harry Chandler and Dorothy Buff Chandler, and the Buffum department stores ran from about 1907 to 1963 or so. There were 16 of them in the Southern California area. Otis began working at the Times in 1953. He, at age 32 in 1960, was chosen as publisher. In 1961, the Times announced it would cover all sides of the political spectrum, and they pretty much did at that time. It was a great paper, and it was objective, and they didn't seem to have a political slant. In 1979, the Times published more advertising than any other paper in the world for the 25th consecutive year. It was very successful. Now, Otis had a buddy from college named Jack Burke. Jack Burke started a firm called Geotech. He got Otis to talk key Los Angeles people that he knew into investing in this firm. Forgot to mention that Otis got a big commission on each of their investments. He also forgot to mention that Geotech was a scam. Otis was had by his friend from college. So he ended up resigning as publisher of the Times. He was fired as editor-in-chief of the Times Mirror Company. He divorced his wife and married Bettina Whitaker, who was a PR executive for Shakey's Pizza. In 2000, the family sold the Times Mirror Company to the Tribune Company that owned the Chicago Tribune. Now, Otis didn't want his legacy or his family's legacy to be forgotten. He loved cars and he loved hunting animals. So he opened the Chandler Vintage Museum of Transportation and Wildlife in Oxnard, and probably most of us have been there and seen that. That was to be his legacy to the future and his family's name's legacy to the future. He died in February of 2006, and by October, his children and heirs had sold the museum and all its contents for $36 million. It was not exactly a happy Father's Day, I would guess.
No.
Okay, the rise. We passed every test. We've gone from good to best. You can judge for yourself. We are now top shelf. The new team performed. The paper was transformed. We don't have to inflate. The Times went from good to great. And at the end, by 91, the Times began to trail many competitors and then began a turnover of writers and editors. Coverage of national and foreign stories declined, and this media position began falling steadily behind. So that was the end of a wonderful life. The kind of things went wrong at the end, which was the case with all of these. Now, let's just do a quick recap. We had William Mulholland. He was an LA aqueduct builder, and the St. Francis Dam collapse kind of ruined his reputation. William Workman, who was a ranchero and broker, went bankrupt. Thaddeus Lowe, a great scientist and businessman, went broke. Griffith shot his wife. He was a successful miner. Amy Semple McPherson, the great evangelist, disappeared in this mystery story. Edward Doheny, the oil tycoon, was kind of brought down by the Teapot Dome scandal. Spade Cooley, a great Western entertainer, beat his wife to death. And Otis Chandler, newspaper publisher, was caught up in the Geotech scam. So that's a summary. And I just want to point out, in addition to these individual books, there's one other one. If you're into weightlifting, this will be good for curls, which is a combination of all of the books all 8 of them together, and they're all available from Amazon. So there you have it. People did great things, great lives, contributed magnificently to the city of Los Angeles, but something just kind of went wrong at the end. Thank you. Oh, questions, you say?
Ask for questions.
Oh, ask for questions. Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay, no questions. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Of those families and those people, are there any descendants currently involved in any of the Southern California
They all changed their
of
name.
recognition, or have they all just gone underground or?
That's a good question, and since I don't know the answer, and I don't know if anybody else does, probably they have, stepped out of the public eye. And remember, we do have to thank Gary Turner for the poetry in these books. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Nick.
Greystone was part of that Doheny story. She might include in the next presentation.
Excellent.
Greystone mentioned in Beverly Hills.
Okay, we'll look forward to that.
Well, we had a couple of wife beaters.
Yeah, the kind of a lesson for all of us, don't shoot your wife in the face.
So I want to thank Paul, and from the crowd, we have a nicely made plaque commemorating this wonderful event. I knew a movie producer once, and he told me this. He said that in the movie industry, which has this great mystique, that it's all fabulous and it's beautiful and it's rich, etc., etc. He says every single one of the people in movies is just like these people and just like you and me. They all have problems. The movie industry has the same problems every other industry has. They're all ordinary people with big problems and some miserable people to boot. So it's just interesting to note that you and I are all great, and we all have problems, just like all of them. Anyway, I look forward to next month. Like I said, Mark Hall Patton will be speaking. He is one of the most fabulous speakers. He is an actual porn star, believe it or not. That is Pawn Star. And he is a really good speaker, and he is on TV. He, judges the quality and the cost and value of historical items. So he's a great guy. I look forward to seeing you next month. Don't miss it.